On New Year's Day, a Tesla Cybertruck exploded in front of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Law enforcement officials identified the perpetrator as Matthew Livelsberger, an active-duty Green Beret using DNA, dental records, tattoos, and a recovered military ID. Where the Cybertruck explosion incident takes a strange turn is the surfacing of an email from the alleged perpetrator, Matthew Livelsberger, sent 3 days prior to the explosion to Sam Shoemate, a retired Army Chief Warrant Officer.
When he reached out to me, Matt Livelsberger was nobody, okay? That was just a name. He said, this is who I am, and this is where you can find my bona fides. So his LinkedIn, and then he contacted me on Signal as well. So after the fact, you keep in mind, he contacted me on Tuesday, and then Wednesday, he allegedly committed the action. And then on Thursday, I found out that Matt Livelsberger or Matt Berg, same person, were connected to this event. When I went back through and I checked everything, I checked the email, somebody claiming that he is that person. So that was significant because this was a name in the news that I had been given before that action took place. But when I saw on social media that somebody had been, those friends and family of his who had been talking to him on Signal, who knew him, knew that it was him. This is normal everyday interaction. They had been speaking to him on Signal for, let's just say, years. They knew this was in fact Matt who they were speaking to, put out these screenshots that showed that his safety number had changed after the event. So I went in and checked the same message that I had from Matt. I had that single message from Matt that said initial contact, and I had the same exact screenshot in my phone of a safety number that had changed. So that to me confirmed that that email came, if not from Matt Livelsberger, at least from his device, for certain.
After Shoemate refused to take the COVID vaccine, he became a safe haven source for whistleblowers looking to expose corruption inside the Department of Defense. After Livelsberger's identity was released, Shoemate had the shocking realization that perhaps he alone possessed the potential reason behind the explosion, whereas Livelsberger laid out his concerns for a preeminent drone attack and alleged war crimes dating back to 2019 in Afghanistan. Following Shoemate's realization, he disclosed this information to the FBI. Due to the distrust of the FBI following other manifestos being withheld from the public, Shoemate felt a duty to the public and reluctantly went on the Sean Ryan Show podcast to disclose not only the email itself, but also messages he received from on the Signal app. Following the release of the episode, it was discovered that Livelsberger had also reached out directly to the Sean Ryan Show and the Anti-Hero podcast in the days leading up to January 1st. The question on everyone's mind then became, why? Why would an experienced Green Beret carry out what looked to be a very unsophisticated bomb inside a Cybertruck at Trump International Hotel? Was this a setup? Livelsberger pointed out in the email to what he called gravitic propulsion aircraft from China as the explanation for the drone sightings on the East Coast. He indicated an imminent Chinese threat to national security that could take out the White House or any target on the East Coast, leading to world war. Livelsberger also expressed concern that he was being followed by Homeland Security or FBI, but they likely were keeping their distance because he had a bomb in his vehicle. His plea to Shoemate and others was for media exposure to avoid such a disaster. After all the drone sightings in the closing weeks of 2024, there have been warnings from prominent figures regarding a threat of attack, even the possibility of an event related to Donald Trump's inauguration. Was Livelsberger trying to get our attention and warn us about a credible threat? How would he have this intelligence as someone who only began working with drones 2 months prior? We look to the document released by law enforcement, said to be found in the Notes app on Livelsberger's phone, where he allegedly wrote this: "We are the United States of America, the best country people to ever exist. But right now we are terminally ill and headed toward collapse. We are crumbling because of a lack of self-respect, morals, and respect for others. Greed and gluttony has consumed us. The top 1% decided long ago they weren't going to bring everyone else with them. You are cattle to them. We have strayed from family values and corrupted our minds, and I am a prime example of having it all, but it never being enough. A lot of us are just sitting around waiting to die. No sunlight, no steps, no fresh air, no hope. Our children are addicted to screens by the age of 2. We are filling our bodies with processed foods. Our population is too fat to join the military, yet we are facing a war with China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran before 2030. We must take these actions if we are going to make it past the next few years in one piece. We must end the war in Ukraine with negotiated settlement. It is the only way. Focus on strength and winning. Masculinity is good and men must be leaders. Strength is a deterrent and fear is the product. Weeded out those in our government and military who do not idealize. Number 2. The income inequality in this country and cost of living is outrageous. The number of homeless on our street is embarrassing and disgusting. Have some pride and take care of this. Stop obsessing over diversity. We are all diverse, and DEI is a cancer. Thankfully, we rejected the DEI candidate and will have a real president instead of weekended Bernies. We must move on from the culture of weakness and self-enrichment perpetuated by our senior political and military leaders. We are done with the blatant corruption. Our soldiers are done fighting wars without end states or clear objectives. This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Why did I personally do it now? I needed to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Consider this last sunset of 24 and my actions, the end of our sickness, and a new chapter of health for our people. Rally around the Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. We are second to none. Fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, time to wake up. We are being led by weak and feckless leadership who only serve to enrich themselves. Military and vets move on D.C. starting now. Militias facilitate and augment this activity. Occupy every major road along federal buildings and the campus of Fed buildings by the hundreds of thousands. Lock the highways around down with semis right after everybody gets in. Hold until the purge is complete. Try peaceful means first, but be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. They all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse. Subsequently, law enforcement reportedly found an additional 6-page manifesto that is yet to be released, as well as several journal entries which detail the days prior to the explosion. The entries began on December 21st with detailed accounts of Livelsberger alleging various people were watching him, beginning at the airport, which we believe to be in Colorado Springs, where he lived with his wife and a baby daughter. The same detailed accounts of alleged surveillance continued on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, but the journal entry for Christmas Day reveals Livelsberger was with his family and his wife's family. On December 26th, the journal entry indicates Livelsberger was packing up while his wife was away from the home. The New York Post has reported that was the same day that Livelsberger's wife confronted him about his infidelity, resulting in an argument. It appears at this point, Livelsberger began to spiral. He left his home in Colorado Springs and arrived in Denver the following day, where he began to use the AI tool ChatGPT, asking questions regarding calculating explosive configurations, the size pistol it would take to set the explosion off, and what type of phone didn't require personal information for activation. He also visited a gun shop, where he submitted a background clearance for a .50 caliber Desert Eagle handgun and an AR pistol brace. He waited in Denver for 3 days to obtain the clearance to purchase. It was also on December 27th where his journal entry indicates he found what he believed to be a micro audio and video transmitter in his hotel room, but decided to leave it in place. The next 2 days of entries detail his concern for being abducted and being watched. It was also during this time in Denver that Livelsberger reached out to the Sean Ryan Show and Sam Shoemate and at least 2 former girlfriends. According to his journal, Livelsberger was high on weed and drinking during this time. He also then rented the Tesla Cybertruck through the Turo app, which dropped off the vehicle. Livelsberger left Denver on December 30th after picking up his guns, and although he indicated in the email to Shoemate he was heading to Mexico, he instead proceeded to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where his journal indicated he purchased fireworks along the way and stayed at what he called a, quote, massive Airbnb. It was on December 31st that Livelsberger says he reached a decision to go to the Grand Canyon Glass Walkway Bridge for what he called the, quote, final commit or not, while expressing concern someone might interdict or are just assigned to, quote, see this transfer through. He also indicated in his writings his grievances over the failed Afghanistan withdrawal and said he was a shell of a human being with nothing to live for, and that graphic encounters replay every day which have ruined his relationships. Livelsberger also lists his reason for the detailed writing as assisting in the investigation, quote, so the focus will be on the task at hand of removing Democrat Party elements in the current administration and future remaining generals in the military and Joint Chiefs. It is unknown at this point why Livelsberger decided to continue past the Grand Canyon and proceed to Las Vegas. The trip is around 600 miles and would take about 8.5 hours without stopping, and we know there were stops to charge the electric vehicle. There appears to be a discrepancy in Livelsberger's journal timeline compared to where law enforcement indicated he had stopped to charge the vehicle. Livelsberger said he was in Albuquerque on December 30th, but Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Sheriff Kevin McMahill claims they tracked his movements through the Tesla charging stations to Monument, Colorado on December 30th, and on December 31st at charging stations in Trinidad, Colorado, Las Vegas, New Mexico, and Albuquerque and Gallup, New Mexico. We have yet to receive an explanation for this discrepancy in timeline. On January 1st, Livelsberger was first spotted in Las Vegas around 7:30 a.m. local time, where he proceeded to Trump International Hotel and pulled through the valet and then proceeded back to Las Vegas Boulevard, where he then spent nearly 45 minutes in the parking lot of a business believed to be where he poured fuel throughout the vehicle, as surveillance video indicates a liquid leaking from the vehicle as he was leaving. He then drove back to Trump International, where he again pulled into the valet area and the vehicle exploded at 8:39 a.m. Police maintain that Livelsberger died of a self-inflicted .50 caliber gunshot wound that they believe may have ignited the explosive materials found in the vehicle, including racing fuel, birdshot, fireworks, smokeless powder, super fuel, and exploding targets. Newly released video footage at the Trump Hotel shows what appears to be a muzzle flash right before the explosion. Law enforcement recovered 3 .50 caliber casings and indicated that one round was shot and the other 2 were burned up. According to Tesla, the vehicle was not in self-driving mode, and surveillance video corroborates this fact, showing what appears to be Livelsberger's hands on the steering wheel controlling the vehicle. Tesla indicated internal cabin video is only active in full self-driving mode, and even at that point is not stored. Some in the Special Forces community, especially those who served with Livelsberger, believe he was framed and point to mysteries in the official story that don't add up. A few good questions have arisen, and this is what I have found when I looked into them. Was Livelsberger's phone hacked due to his signal number changing after the explosion? If law enforcement were to access his account from another device as part of their investigation, it likely would change. Or, why would a trained and elite Green Beret use ChatGPT to look up explosives and create this type of unsophisticated device? Well, Livelsberger seems to have made a spontaneous decision to leave his home in Colorado Springs after a fight with his wife. He was on leave and didn't have access to military-grade explosive materials. Or another question, how do we know he shot himself? It's clear the person in the vehicle was alive in the video surveillance at Trump Hotel, and prior video from the parking lot location shows this person alive as well. In that video, it shows the same person pouring what looks to be fuel all over the interior of the vehicle. Slowed down video shows what appears to be a muzzle flash in the split second prior to the blast. Well, is it possible he was set up and the videos are deep fakes? Anything is possible, but that would mean his family was in on it and an entire team would be necessary to pull this off, which then leads to the question why and who would be motivated to do so. Even if you believe part of Livelsberger's writings, the information seems to contradict itself. Authorities have confirmed it was Livelsberger that took receipt of the rented vehicle from Turo, and the correspondence he had with ex-girlfriends also indicated authenticity. Police also maintain the source of the messages and emails came from Livelsberger's phone. How can we trust the Las Vegas Metro Police since they still haven't provided answers on the Las Vegas shooting in 2017? Well, that's a good question, and you make an excellent point. But this incident is not contained to one location and spans multiple states and multiple surveillance points and sources. Police have yet to examine Livelsberger's laptop and a second cell phone. It's possible we'll receive additional answers that will clarify the many outstanding questions. At this point, unfortunately, it appears quite possible that the traumatic brain injury Livelsberger suffered around 2017, along with ongoing PTSD and the recent disagreement with his wife, could have all contributed to a tragic case of a decorated combat veteran taking his own life after an erratic few days. The sad reality is, this scenario of a soldier snapping and using their training to terrorize the American people is not an isolated incident. That very same day, many woke up to news of a heinous terrorist attack carried out with a truck on the streets of New Orleans by a seemingly radicalized former American soldier turned jihadist named Shamsuddin Jabbar. Are these terrible events an indicator of a lack of mental health resources for the military? What has our military endured and continue to burden that is leading some of our most trained soldiers to lose their minds?
As far as special operations, I think it's a unique community to look at for this specifically because I have a lot of friends who are in that community, and one in particular who runs a show on Instagram called Security Halt, and he deals with this specifically. He is a former Green Beret himself, has dealt with a lot of trauma and PTSD, and he can speak firsthand about the struggles mentally and just how quickly things can spiral and break down without having those constraints in place to guard yourself, because there's everything from the amount of TBIs a lot of these guys have received from explosions, from falling off of stuff, just combat in general. And then they go into their everyday life. And a lot of times folks a lot of these guys try to compensate with alcohol or even drugs in some case. And it's a community that is very insulated. We don't know a lot about it. We glorify them on the surface, and they should be praised because what they do for this country is incredible. But we don't have that bigger conversation about the trauma they endure and what they're bringing home with them. So when stuff like this happens, we look at that track record of that individual and we say, man, that's a top-notch guy, solid performer, good friend, good whatever, but we're not really speaking to what this person might have been harboring for so long. And like you said, they are trained to deal with stress at a higher level. And yet, how much of that are they bottling up? They're taking with them day in and day out until it boils over and it turns into something else. And if somebody is dealing with a moral injury, specifically for the folks that have struggled so much after the Afghan withdrawal and asking the question of what was it all for? That moral injury of thinking about the friends that they have lost in combat and maybe things they did in combat. And you couple that with medicine and maybe drugs or alcohol or anything else. It is an extremely violent combination that can explode. And so I'm only speculating on the general. I'm not speaking to Matt Livelsberger's situation. I don't know, but I know that this is a community that deals with this a lot. I have seen some of it. I have spoken to enough people that have dealt with it and tried to walk folks off the ledge.
One thing I know for sure is our military is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, and the least we can do is ensure they receive proper care in times of crisis. This brings veteran health once again to the forefront as the new Trump administration is seeking to install a former military serviceman in Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. While Hegseth has received opposition from some Democrats, if you ask many veterans, they're optimistic about a soldier taking the helm rather than a general, a sentiment that Matthew Livelsberger seemed to also support. It's a tragedy that he won't be around to see that future. Despite the outcome, I am grateful for Matthew Livelsberger's service, and we offer our condolences to his family. I'm Ike Wingate, and this has been the Ike Report.